All right, thanks for joining. As always, I just want to really thank the people that joined for our studies and all that sort of thing. Today, we're going to do some really good stuff. We're going to call it something like the temple and the seed. The temple and the seed. And we're going to start out in 1 Corinthians 3:16, and then we're going to run on over to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. Okay? Then after that, we're going to go over to Galatians 3:16, and then probably right after that, we're going to go over and see what the 12th chapter of Revelation has to say. So we got some good stuff in the mix here today. Oh yeah, it's going to be a fun day. We're going to confirm some things, especially about the temple and what is all involved in that temple and how we should look at that temple. Okay, so let's go over to 1 Corinthians 3:16 and time out. Okay, now we're ready. Got to have my eyeballs. Okay. Know ye not that ye, in other words, don't you know, this is Paul talking to the Corinthians, don't you know that this is old prose English and all that, King James, know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you. That was the quantifier. Here's the qualifier. If any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy, for the temple of God is holy, which temple ye are. So he's using a double confirmation, and he's saying essentially that you're the temple, which is a completely, I don't want to say abstract, but it's a complete departure from Paul. Now, Paul studied at the feet of Gamaliel in Jerusalem. He was a Benjamite. He had a smattering of Benjamites in Jerusalem. And Paul, out of anybody, knew the rule book, okay, the Torah. He knew it. So now he's saying, this is after his conversion, from Saul of Tarsus to Paul of Tarsus, and all of that. He knew that temple is holy. But now he's taking that whole concept as a Pharisee of all people, and he's turning it around so that he's repositioning it and qualifying it in the case of every believer after the cross. Jew, Greek, Gentile, doesn't matter. What race you are, anything, doesn't matter. Know ye not that ye are the temple. So let's go into that word, that phraseology, that wordology, however you want to paraphrase it, of temple. In a Strong's 3485, naos, or naos, shrine, temple. And then, to reconfirm what Paul was saying, as well, in 1 Corinthians 3:17, it's the same word. Now, that's the point that we want to make, because it's exactly the same word, and the people of his day, because he's talking to the people in the Corinthians, okay, of Corinth, that's what I wanted to say. And he was, again, making the point that know ye not that ye are now the temple of the living God. A complete departure, a complete about-face, as we say in the military, a complete reversal of roles from the sanctification of that physical temple that additionally went away in 66 to 70 AD with the siege of Jerusalem by Titus of the 10th Roman Legion, who later became, he was a prince, he later became a Caesar, that we talk about all the time in Daniel 9:24 to 27. But here he's talking about that temple is now within. If you were around at the time and probably didn't know Paul, or if you just met him or something or whatever, and you found out about his credentials, and if you were of the sect, S-E-C-T, of the Pharisees from Jerusalem, and you just met Paul, you'd say something like, Paul, are you out of your mind? Paul, I read the letter that you wrote to the Corinthians. What are you saying? What are you doing? Are you nuts? That would have been the reaction of another Pharisee from the Sanhedrin. Because what Paul is saying here, let's read it again, and we'll jump on over to Galatians 3:16. I'm sorry, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. Then it will be Galatians 3:16, and then it will be Revelation chapter 12. Okay, know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? That, for a Pharisee to say that, if Paul, we'll put it in the common modern day parlance, if Paul belonged to a 5-star VIP country club, he'd be gone right now for saying something like that in a religious sense, if that were possible. If he were living today, he would have his membership revoked, is what we're saying. So it was radical for him to say that, to be very blunt. It was very, very radical for him to say that. So again, let's go over to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4, and see what that says. And keep in mind that naos word for temple. Here we go. Now we're talking about a concept here, and it's called the spirit of Antichrist. Man of sin, son of perdition. Again, the man of sin, son of perdition. There is only one other person in the whole entire scriptures that was called the son of perdition. You know who that was? You should. Judas Iscariot. Judas Iscariot. Son of perdition. Keep that in mind. Who opposest and exaltest himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped. These are heavy-duty words that Paul is speaking to the assembly, the called-out assembly, ecclesia, in consonance with Matthew 16:18. The called-out assembly is who Paul is addressing here in 2 Thessalonians 2:4. So that he as God, we're talking about a spiritual connotation, that he as God, as the spirit of Antichrist, sitteth in the temple of God, shewing himself that he is God. Let's go into the breakdown. It's called, the formal term is called etymology of the lingua franca. In other words, the spoken language, which was Greek at that time, which preceded Rome. They were still writing and conversing in Greek because it was the VIP, the highfalutin, the mover shaker language, and the lawyers and the scribes, the Pharisees, they all knew it. That was the language. Now, let's again look at the word temple. Do you know what it says? Amazingly, it runs perfectly in consonance, parallels succinctly perfectly with the same temple that's in 1 Corinthians 3:16 of naos, N-A-O-S. It's the same word. It's the same word. So because of the fact that Paul addressed that assembly that he was previously talking to of Thessalonica, the Thessalonians, get a little tongue twisted sometimes, then you know that it's a spiritual overlay that is reapplied here in 2 Thessalonians 2:4. It's the same word. Do you see that? Are we making this? Hopefully we're making this clear, because you can't talk about that temple in one portion of the word without mistaking. In other words, you can't get around the fact, or ignore the fact is a better way to put it, that it means something that is spiritual, that Paul is talking about. The temple that is a spiritual temple in each believer, and that exact word shows up where the man of sin, son of perdition, in 2 Thessalonians is sitting. Now, how coincidental is that? It's undeniable. It's incontrovertible. These are big words, sorry. It's perfect. It perfectly matches itself in both areas as being the same exact word that describes a spiritual condition of each believer. And then in the big picture sense, the spiritual, matter of fact, we'll even say this about that, because you have the micro and the macro. The micro sense, yeah, we'll just leave it here. We'll get to the other two references tomorrow that talks about the seed. Right now we're talking about the temple. Okay, so in a very micronized version of that word, naos, is for each believer as having that temple within that Paul referenced in 1 Corinthians 3:16. That he reiterates as being the macro, the big picture sense, the big picture sense of that spirit of iniquity, of lawlessness, that man of sin, son of perdition, that sits in the same temple. Do you see that? Do you see that? We hope you do. We really hope you do. It's not hard stuff. It just jumps out at you. And we should all be saying the same thing. We hope you are. We pray, we hope, and all of that you are. If you're remnant, stay remnant. Get this word out there to as many people as you can. And even though our numbers are small, it doesn't matter. Because tomorrow's going to be fun too, because we'll be talking about that seed in Galatians 3:16, which also shows up as the remnant of her seed in chapter 12 of Revelation. Love you guys. We'll talk soon.